cover atheism, agnosticism, and materialism. I know it's a lot of things, but I'm not going to go into a great deal of information on each one. I just want you to understand, again, because it's out there, and we live in a pagan world, and you're going to find people who profess these things. In fact, you'll find people who will live, they may not profess it, but they're actually living this kind of life. Atheism, as the word, if you take it down to its roots, means no God, against God. And atheists believe that there is no God. Well, and that's what they'll tell you, that they don't believe in God. But they're probably, in most cases, lying to you and lying to themselves. There really are very, very few true atheists out there in the world. They may say that, but actually most of them fall into the category of agnostics, and we'll get to them next. They claim that there is no God, they claim that they don't believe in God, and yet they're really lying to themselves. I'll give you a good example. If you've ever heard of her, Madalyn Murray O'Hair, very famous atheist and communist, because she was the one who brought, on behalf of her son, she brought it to the Supreme Court that the prayer should be taken out of public schools. That it was against her rights because she was an atheist, and her son's rights because he was an atheist. He later left atheism and became a Protestant minister. So, but anyway, nothing good. She was later kidnapped and held for ransom and then murdered, along with some other members of her family. So yeah, that's, the devil turns on your hand. You think he's your friend, but he doesn't. But anyway, one time, because I had again, I think I warned you, Feasts of Our Lady are not good in my community. And on the Feast of Our Lady, I had an appendicitis. And so I was recovering from that. It was the beginning of October. I had set out my prayers and done my spiritual reading. So I was listening to the radio. And Madalyn Murray O'Hair was the featured, they were talking to her, they were interviewing her. And one of the callers called up, and all that the caller said was, "I'm praying for you," and hung up. And Mrs. O'Hair went ballistic. You have no right to pray for me. That's against my rights. Your praying for me is against my rights. Now think about that. I keep telling you, use your brains. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that statement?
It's not true.
What's not true about it?
Well, she has all the right to pray for anybody she wants.
But what's wrong with the problem about praying for her? Why should Mrs. O'Hair be that upset about it?
Right, because she doesn't believe.
She doesn't believe in God, so you're just wasting your time praying for me. And it's my time to waste, right? So she should have, if she was a true atheist, she would have just sloughed it off and said, well, go ahead and waste your time. But she didn't. So she knew deep down that the prayers of that woman meant something and would have an effect. Most atheists do, deep down in their soul, they do, because again, remember, conscience is something that God gave you. It's part of human nature. And you may lock it away in a box like the atheists do and some of the agnostics. You may put it away that way, but it's still there. And in the dark, at the moment of death, and the fact that she was kidnapped and was held, I wonder how much time she had to think about that before, because they were held for weeks before they were finally killed. They had plenty of time to think about that. And I wonder if facing death made her actually begin to think a little bit more about God and her life. But again, that's atheism. Agnostics don't say that they don't believe in God, but they don't say that they do. An agnostic doesn't care one way or the other. They don't, the word agnostic means I don't know. And an agnostic says, I don't know, one way or the other. And what they don't say, but they think is, and I don't care. I don't know and I don't care. And they live their lives that way. I don't know and I don't care. I'll just go on, maybe there's a God, maybe there's not, but he's not bothering me, so I'm not going to bother him. And they think that that's going to get them through life, and they never want to think about death. And both atheists and agnostics live because they're not thinking about a life after death. Everything is in this world for them. So they're the ones who they want to live longer, and so science is very important in their lives, especially anything that will prolong life. And they're always looking for the next greatest scientific advancement that will make them healthier. They'll watch their diets, they'll exercise, and they'll do all those things to make themselves live longer, because there's nothing for them after death, so they want to get as much out of it in this life as possible. And I often wonder how many of them, when they do get to be older, continue to be either atheists or agnostics, because the closer you get to death, the more it's in your face. And you have to think about it, especially when you begin to get diseases that science can't cure, and other problems, that face you. Now, we talked about reason and faith never contradict each other. And because science is a branch of reason, science is based on reason. Science and religion will never contradict each other. True science. True science. What is true science? Scientific laws never contradict anything in our religion. But theories are opinions that people put out there. If a scientist follows the scientific method, a scientific method is where you see something and you observe it, you say, and you begin to look into it, examine it, and you write down, make a lot of data, collect a lot of data, and you put together a hypothesis or a theory. A theory is not a law. A theory is an opinion. And at that point, a true scientist begins to perform experiments to try and prove or disprove the theory. And once he has performed experiments that can prove this theory, then the theory will be accepted as a law. For example, Gregor Mendel, an Augustinian monk, was the one who developed the laws of genetics. He was a monk, he was a gardener. He was and he raised peas and beans, for the monastery. And he noticed certain beans were always smooth, and these beans over here were always wrinkled, And he began to experiment crossing them, and he came up with the laws of genetics. Why a father and mother's children will have blue eyes or brown eyes. You have genes, and that's what. And these genes carry traits, either for blue eye, or for brown eye, for hazel, whatever color eyes. And like the peas had traits, smooth or wrinkled. And he found that by crossing them, there was certain traits were more dominant than others. And these became laws, the laws of genetics. But he experimented, and he was able to prove his hypothesis. And evolution is a theory. Global warming is a theory. These are theories, and they are not proved. And they probably will never be proved. Every time they've tried to prove evolution, they've come up with actually evidence to support creationism. They thought the Neanderthal man was, the missing link. As I said, he believed in God and buried his dead. Therefore, he was not a missing link. He was human. And they've come up with others too. But every time they do, they find it doesn't fit. It's actually against them. So faith and science, true science, will never contradict each other. And so a lot of these atheists and agnostics will claim science as, as their background, and, why faith is to try to disprove your religion or believing in God. And actually, it doesn't. Most of these people do not use logic. If they did, they would have to believe in God. Because logically, as we went through, was it 2 weeks ago? Logic proves that there is a God. It was last week. So, and you also find that these people, whether agnostics or atheists, that they can't. I noticed I just missed something in my notes. If really true scientists, really good scientists, we have a lot in the Catholic faith to thank these scientists for. For example, some of the most notable improvements that we've in science came through Catholic scientists like Gregor Mendel. Louis Pasteur discovered rabies was only one of the things that he found. He made the vaccine for rabies. Before that, if you were bit by a rabid dog, you died. Now there's a possibility of living because they have a vaccine. It's very painful, but you can still live. Louis Pasteur never went into his laboratory, and that was only one. He had many scientific discoveries. He never went into his laboratory without kneeling down and saying his rosary first. So, but these atheists and agnostics, they don't understand that loving God and loving your neighbor are two sides of the same, different sides of the same coin. And when you throw God out of the equation, you throw out loving your neighbor too. And that's why a lot of atheists and agnostics, they have a very twisted idea of what helping your neighbor means.
No, that's his mom.
Atheists don't even examine that. Agnostics will, but to them it's like, because they don't believe in God, but because they don't say, I don't know if there's a God or not, they feel somewhere that maybe there is, and maybe I should do something. It's like throwing the dog a bone, So maybe if I do something, I'll put some money in this homeless guy standing on the corner, I'll give him some money. Just, because if there is a God out there, it's like insurance policy, just in case that there might be a God. When I come to die, I can always say, well, I did give that homeless guy some money. But remember what we had said, that is, there's two kinds of reward, natural reward and supernatural reward, and the reward you get depends upon why you're doing it. If you're doing it for God, you get supernatural reward. If you're doing it for yourself, you get natural reward. That means you're going to get rewarded in this life, not after this life. So yeah, that agnostic who gave the homeless person some money may get some reward in this life. He gets a raise in pay, or he can pat himself on his back and tell himself, and somebody else in the car may say, hey, that was really nice of you, and he's getting his reward here. He won't get reward when he dies. So, and the other thing you have to think about these agnostics and atheists is, again, they have formed their consciences to suit themselves. We talked about conscience last time, and again, the fact that Madeline Murray O'Hare would get upset about that is deep down, her conscience is telling her there's something wrong with this. They have made their own consciences. They formed their own conscience. And you have to obey the conscience that God gave you, not the one that you made for yourself out of your selfishness, your prejudice, and your ignorance. So, an atheist, if he's a true atheist, doesn't believe in anything after death. And he will and because he doesn't believe in anything after death, he doesn't mind being as unscrupulous as he wants in this life. It would surprise me some of the, major politicians up there and some of these, like Fauci and a few of these other guys, these scientists, that they are atheists or at least agnostics, because they don't have a problem with being unscrupulous, because they don't believe that there's going to be any punishment. If they truly are, they don't believe in any punishment after death. Agnostic, like I say, he wants to throw that bone to the dog, and God's the dog, by being occasionally good, or doing something occasionally good, because they're not sure. So yeah, they won't be quite so unscrupulous as an atheist, but they will. They will when it suits themselves, because they are extremely selfish, and it's this selfishness that is the problem, and it's the problem why these people embrace agnosticism and atheism, and they won't have a problem with killing an unborn child, because again, it's that selfishness. And they won't have a problem with killing an elderly person either and calling it mercy killing, because again, it's selfishness. Mom and dad are just too hard to take care of. So we put them in the nursing home, and then after a while, the nursing home is becoming too expensive, or the nursing home says they're, what is it, how did they put it now? Quality of life, yes, their quality of life is not, my mother didn't have Alzheimer's, but she did have dementia. And over a period of time, like 12 years, she, did become, I watched her go back in time from an adult to a child till, she was my child. When my sister came to see her, she said to my mom, do you reckon, Mom, you know who I am? And I thought, please don't ask what her name is. My mom couldn't remember names, but she knew faces. And she said, my mom nodded her head, and my sister said, yeah, I'm your favorite daughter, aren't I? And my mom nodded. She said, yeah, I am her favorite daughter. And I said, wait a minute, watch this. Mom, who am I? And my mom looked at me. You're my mom. I said, yeah, and you may be her favorite mother, but I'm her mom. But anyway, she got to, the point she all day long she just lay there, and she was very calm and peaceful. My mother had been a very good holy woman, and sometimes I ask myself, why, I ask God, well, why don't you take her so that she can enjoy you in heaven? Why is, she's not suffering, but is she doing anything? I mean, is she was a third order Carmelite. She fasted all day and didn't eat until after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Except, water, and then after 4 o'clock, she had bread and water and, vegetables and whatever, but she prayed all the time, and I thought, how she can't do any of that anymore. And then one of the nurses came to me one time, and she said, I enjoy your mother. And I thought, how does she enjoy my mother? I mean, I enjoy my mother, but she's my mom. Because I used to go every day to feed her at lunchtime to make sure that she ate, because she wouldn't eat for the nurses, but she would eat for me. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, when I'm having a really bad day, I just go and sit with your mom, and she holds my hand, and she says, I feel so much better. So my mom was still doing something, and So don't give me the quality of life thing. So then we come to materialism. Atheists and agnostics, they're almost always materialists as well. But you don't have to be an atheist or an agnostic to be a materialist. Materialists, their theory is that matter is the most important thing. The theory holds that everything that is knowable and can be explained on the basis of matter. Everything is made up of matter, and that's the only thing that's important. Except God, because God isn't made up of matter. So they kind of ignore him. True materialists, they don't believe in God, they tend to be agnostics. But they won't go after you if you believe in God. Because first of all, they believe that the fact that you believe in God, that's helpful because it's good for society. People who believe in God tend to be good citizens, and so they won't go after you for believing in God because you tend to be a good citizen and they can manipulate you better. So they won't bother with that. They won't, but they themselves, if they're don't believe in God, because again, God doesn't make up. He's not made up of matter. So again, because science and faith don't contradict each other, materialism tries to make its claim based on science, and again, their claim is faulty because science and religion won't contradict each other. The natural law depends upon the fact that there is a creator who made man for a purpose, and who by making them set up certain relationships between man, and between man and himself. And that is their problem. They don't recognize that relationship. And so they don't recognize any natural laws. Any natural law, that you owe anything to God or that you owe anything to your neighbor. Again, they accept the fact of helping your neighbor because it's good for society. And so if there's no natural law, then there is also no such thing as sin. Because natural law is the basis for sin. So they don't want to throw it out. It would be like throwing the baby out with the bathwater to throw out natural law. So yes, they say there are things that are sinful. You know, you shouldn't lie, you shouldn't steal, you shouldn't kill people because that's bad for society. So they accept, certain commandments only because society can't function without them. So the materialists out there in the world, they will accept certain moral laws because it's good for society, because society can't function without it. And so and they believe that you as a person have a duty to other human beings because they are human beings, but you don't have any duties to God. This whole idea of materialism has influenced not just the government, but education, especially since the 1950s, education, social agencies, and medicine. Those are the three areas that materialism has really had the most influence over. In education, you get that whole idea of separation of church and state. So in education, we have to put God in a corner, in a box. We can't talk about him in the classroom, but we can talk about materialism. We can push, the human family idea. We can push evolution. We can push things like that because that's helping society. That's what we believe in. And they push people to go to college rather than to trade school. Why? Well, because actually, from their point of view, it's better if you go to college because they'll have 4 more years of to be able to indoctrinate you. Right, exactly. Where if you go to trade school, you're out of their realm, and you're working with your hands, and that's why they tell you you should go to college, because for some reason working with your hands and being close to the earth and nature is demeaning. And you should, go to college and get an intellectual job, rather than, but don't use your mind. Get an intellectual job, but don't use your mind, because then you might actually have to think, and it might go against what they've been brainwashing you with all these years. But the reason why they want you to go to colleges, go to college, get a good paying job, and make a lot of money. The money is the important thing, because they are materialists, and material things matter to them. Their value, and your worth as a human being is how much money you make. And they're actually ruining it, the whole thing, because who makes the most money now? Not people who go to college. Guys who graduate from the trade schools. They're the electrician, the plumber. They're the guy who fixes the computer instead of sitting behind it working. They're the ones making the money, not the doctors, the lawyers, the computer programmers. No, not the same kind of money the trade school guys make. Sorry. You want to make money, become a plumber, become an electrician. I know, I just had to have electric cooked up. What, the amount of money that they're making is ridiculous. Yeah, so it's, and so they push for an education. And then the social agencies, they promote charity, but not for charity's sake. Not for charity's sake, because God is charity. They're not promoting it for charity. They're promoting it because they want decency and order in society. So they have no problem with stepping into a family and breaking the family apart and taking children into social services if you're doing something that they feel is detrimental to the welfare of everybody else in society, especially the child. Granted, sometimes that's necessary. But we all know cases where they've stepped in and on the basis of false accusations or other things have broken up families for. I remember when homeschooling first started, you homeschooled a child, they would step in because you were ruining that child. You could not possibly educate that child the way that the society can. So it was detrimental to that child's health, and they would step in until the homeschooler, there became so many homeschoolers, and they all got together and took things to court and finally got it straightened out. But that's, again, they want to promote your social rights as opposed to your religious and moral rights. So that you see them promoting things like rainforests and global warming and animals. Animals now are no more important than people. You dare not abuse them. You can murder a baby even after it's born now. I know in New York State you can, and I think in other states it's possible too. But don't you dare leave your dog in a car without, even with the window down on a hot day, or have it chained out in your backyard, or do anything else to an animal. Even having too many of them, you can be arrested for having too many animals.
There was a
Just wait. Pardon me.
shot her llama that was being disobedient, and she got arrested.
Yeah, because animals have rights. Children have no rights. Babies have no rights. But yeah, and just as they want to control the number of animals you have, they want to control the number of children that you have. Again, because it's not it's not good for the society, it's not good for your family. And so they, and that goes into the field of medicine, which again is another field that they like to control. And usually through, and in medicine you see the materialism and things like pushing immunizations and sterilization and euthanasia. Those are things that medicine is now promoting. So you could say, well, all right, so that's fine. Those things are out there in the world, especially materialism, but I'm a Catholic, so it doesn't, it's nice to know that, but materialism, I'm sorry, because it is so prevalent out there in the world, and in education, in society, among your friends, in that pagan world out there, that as I told you, started to tell you last week, it's like secondhand smoke. You know, it's around you, and that miasma that it fosters has an influence on you, whether you're aware of it or not. So let me give you an idea of what a materialistic Catholic, and yes, there are materialistic Catholics, what they look like. And hopefully you will not see yourself in this picture. A materialistic Catholic wants to get ahead in the world. Money is important. Their job is important. They'll do whatever it takes, you know, to climb the social ladder. They want money for pleasures. They want and the comforts that money brings. And they like the job that is, you know, has some prestige to it, not the trade school job. They like the college idea, and they push for that. They rather live in the city than in the country. Of course, we live down here. There's really not a whole lot. You can live in the country, still be in the city down here, but still not open places. But you find a lot of these of people moving like into the big cities because they think they're going to get better jobs there. They're going to live a better life there. There's more entertainment in New York City than there is in other places. Yeah, but it's not like New Orleans. It's not good entertainment. So that's. Regardless of whether he's an office worker or a laboring man, the materialistic Catholic always is thinking about materialistic things. He's thinking about sports and hobbies and fun things to do. What's the next entertaining thing, you know, that's going to happen? He enjoys his amusements, and these things. And I'm not saying that these things are wrong. I'll get to, let me give you the picture and then we'll go over some of these things. His mind is filled up with worldly things. And these things are more important to his mind than spiritual things. No, if it comes down to reading a book, he'll read the latest novel. He never spends any time reading a spiritual book. He goes to Mass on Sunday. He's one of the last ones to arrive and probably one of the first ones to leave. He doesn't stick around after Mass to say any prayers. He goes, and then he only goes to Mass on Sundays and holy days when he has to. He goes to confession, but he's not always well prepared. And he's not always perfectly honest when he goes to confession. He goes to communion because everybody else is going, but it doesn't really mean very much to him. He doesn't really spend any time preparing for communion or thanking God after Holy Communion. He puts money in the collection basket, but he isn't discovering in any other ways that he can be helpful to the church or to his neighbor, or either in spending time or money in other ways. He knows that he has to study and keep abreast of what's going on in the world around him, in the church, but he never thinks about studying about God or what it means to be a Catholic. He hasn't read a spiritual book in a long time. He learns at some point in his life that the church teaches is probably true, and a man might go to hell if he's careless, So in order to be safe, he's very careful about what's a mortal sin, and he avoids those things. But the venial sins, they're just venial sins. You know, that's so I hope that you haven't seen yourself in this picture. And the point I'm trying to make is, this person finds the world is more important to him than his spiritual life. And if that's the case, you're a materialistic Catholic. I'm not saying that sports and hobbies and things like that are wrong. It's the value that you put on them that's wrong. If they are more valuable to you than spiritual values, then you're twisted. And you need to find out spend your time looking at what you can do that's different. You need to change that part in your life. You've been infected. And this is a worse infection than coronavirus, I'm sorry. So examine your conscience, examine yourself. Because, I mean, I can tell you, I had, in New York, I had the girls who went to the high school boarded with me. I had from 9 to 11 girls in most years. And very few of these girls would ever think of going to a religious life. They're too materialistic. And their life was, what fun thing can we do this weekend?
Sister, excuse me. Did that have a lot to do with the parents at home that pushed the agenda of keeping them so social, so in the world, so?
The fact that these girls left their homes and went there to board, they came from good homes. Now, I'm not saying that the parents were not materialistic. In many cases, the parents were, but they didn't realize it. They thought they were good. They were from traditional homes, good practicing Catholics, but they didn't.
What's the disorder?
The disorder was that the girls became so involved in what's the best thing to wear. We're talking about some of these girls. Well, if it didn't come from Gap, you can't possibly wear it.
So it's a lot of peer.
Yeah, a lot of it peer pressure. A lot of it is they look out in the world and they want those things. They want to. They see the value of money. And they want the good things that money will give them. And whether it's fashion or prestige or a nice job, or
So is it
they want
proper?
a husband who's going to have a good job, and I'm going to marry a rich guy. Well,
Is the
why are
proper
you-
Catholic order in the home disrupting the mindset of gaining that religious life, that opportunity to look that way?
I think a lot of, first of all, the most important thing with any family is that both the mother and the father have the same mindset. And in some of these
Proper
families,
Catholic order.
one of the parents may be more materialistic and the other one isn't. But the only families that I saw where the girl actually would go to religious life were families where both the mother and the father made sure that their children understood the value of their spiritual life was more important than the material life. I'm thinking of one particular family. They were well-to-do. They were rather well-to-do. The father had a good job, but the most important thing in the father's life was the Catholic Church, and they were people that you always found doing things at the church, and their children doing things in the church. They had a large family, and they ended up with 2 priests and a nun so far. And I think the youngest daughter may end up go to the convent too. I'm not sure, but they have. But again, they were constantly. Their family wore their family wore nice clothes, but they didn't, it wasn't always, you know, what is the most stylish thing. It was, the mother made sure that the girls were always modestly dressed and made them understand the importance of modesty as opposed to the style. Their family pushed the whole idea from the beginning that that's a pagan world out there, we can't live like that. The most important thing that really, I think, made all of their family understand the problem with materialism was their family insisted, the parents insisted that each one of their children, after they were out of college, or at least college age if they did go to college, gave 1 year to the church in the missions somewhere. Each one of their boys went, one went to Africa, one went to the Philippines, whatever, you know, and spent a year. And then they came back and went to their job. The daughter went down to Mexico with 2 other girls from the school and worked in a mission down there that the society had. When she came back, she went to the convent. That I think is one of the most important things. They saw how, I don't think she was interested in going to the convent till she went to Mexico. Then they saw how, you know, how the rest of the world was. And they saw the need for vocations, the need for help in some, and they saw a way to serve in all these third world countries. And they gave each of their child, they insisted each of their child give 1 year somewhere to the society, and they set it all up and sent them away. And when they got them back, they got a more aware Catholic back. But when they went, even before they went, these were all very spiritual-minded children. Their religion was important to them, and more important than the world out there, because they had raised them that way. If the mother and the father raise their children, where the most important thing that goes on in the home is your spiritual life, you won't get that so much that problem materialism. But if your spiritual life is second to you know, the sports and the other things that are working and money making and how we spend the money, this is what you're going to get, materialism. What goes in comes out. So if you want your children to be, or if you want vocations in your families, make sure that the religion is practiced in the home and outside of the home. That you make sure that your children have plenty of opportunities to give time to the church, as altar boys, or as, you know, fixing flowers, or teaching catechism, or being in the choir, coming and cutting the grass, or, you know, on work days, helping out with the work days. Make sure that they associate with like-minded children, you know, that their friends are of the same ilk. Because, again, that peer pressure is strong out there. And unless your child is strong enough to be the leader in the group, and not one of the followers, you're going to have a problem. Because if your child is strong enough to be the leader, then you won't have to worry. You know, the others will follow them. But if your child is weak and is one of the followers, then you got to make sure that one of their friends is a strong leader, a good Catholic leader. Otherwise, they're going to be led down. You lose your influence as a parent when they become teenagers. Their peers then become the focus. And that becomes more so as they grow away from you into the world out there. Get a job and then have to, you know, at their employers and other work people, the people they work with. Your influences over them is while they're young, and you have to bring them up the way you want them to be, and give them the opportunities and show them what it means to be a good Catholic. And if they're not, as I say, if they're weak, one of the followers, make sure they have friends that are strong leaders. So, anyway, the whole point of that was that it's not so important, as far as the materialism, it's not the things aren't important, it's the value that you put on it. A wise man once said, and I don't know who this was, he said, life is a bridge, pass over it, don't build a house. Life is to get from this world to the next. That's the goal, the next one. Don't put your foundations down here. The foundation is to get you there. That's what you want. The kingdom on the other end, the other side of the bridge. So don't put all your eggs in the basket here. Just, make use of this world to get to the next one. That's the point of this world, is to make use of it to get to the next one. Money in itself is not the problem. Fine if you all become very rich. Just my thing is, make sure you know what to do with the money. It's not for you, it's to give away, to help other people. And that's the point. So, till next week. Next week we're going to go over Revelation. We've done all the thinking parts, how thinking and logic can help you understand that there is a God. Now we need to bring in the Catholic faith as to why the Catholic faith is the only faith, because it's the true faith because of Revelation.